Hello, welcome back to my podcast. Today I'm hanging out with my buddy Shekhar, who's going to ask me a series of questions that he wanted to ask me, and we decided, you know what? This is the modern era. If someone has questions, you can always record them asking it and record your answers. So that's what we did.
Okay, Adi. I know people see you as a filmmaker and producer, and I know that you don't really like those labels.
Mm-hmm.
When I first saw an interview of you on the Corridor Cast, I was blown away within the first few minutes of the interview. And the way I perceived you is as this brilliant guy who sees patterns that no one else sees. And he also has the courage to act on his creative impulses, even when everyone else might reject, what his ideas are. And somehow has the ability to practically apply all of his ideas into making a business that's viable. So it's really fascinating. You have the creative impulse and you can make a viable business. And you figured out the mechanics of the whole Hollywood game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I feel like you are a monopoly in this space where you basically can create whatever projects you have. So I don't know what your thoughts on what I just said.
Well, there are other people who've done that. I would argue that most successful film people are people who found a way to navigate within the system and then eventually extricated them from themselves from the system and then built an infrastructure around themselves, right? So, The Rock's a great example of that. He's an actor, producer. Kevin Smith, who did Clerks and a bunch of other stuff. Kevin Smith is that. Ridley Scott is that. Spielberg obviously created DreamWorks, George, the list goes on. Basically, if there's a filmmaker out there that you've heard of and you're a fan of their work and they've been doing this for an extended period of time, chances are that they figured out a way to construct an ecosystem around themselves that supports them. And it's not always just kind of high art auteurs. As another example, there's a filmmaker named Paul W.S. Anderson, not Paul Thomas Anderson, Paul W.S. Anderson. Mm-hmm. Paul he's a director. He directed the first Mortal Kombat movie back in 1995, wow. Event Horizon. He did a Starship Troopers esque thing called, I believe, Soldier with Kurt Russell. That was and then most recently he's been known for Resident Evil. So he did all the Resident Evil movies, apart from the most recent one, because that was effectively a franchise reboot. And he's married to Mila Jovovich, who plays Alice in the Resident Evil movies, right? Oh, wow. So between the two of them and his producing partner, a guy named Jeremy Bolt, they have they're this trio that get to make big budget movies the way they want to make them, because Mila will usually be in it, right? Monster Hunter is a more recent example of a movie that they did. They also did a Three Musketeers movie 10, 12 years ago. So it's like finding ways to make the system work for you. Versus being a journeyman who gets hired onto things. That works as well, right? So I'm not saying that's one's better than the other. It's just, yeah.
Okay. Adding on to that, the examples of people you gave.
Right.
So those big movies that they make, they don't have committees that can override the decisions of some of these filmmakers you named.
So you take Ridley Scott, and do you know who Ridley Scott is? You've definitely heard the name.
I think it was Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And his last movie was House of Gucci, which came out last year, right? And Blade Runner was an 80s movie. So he did, fucking forget once a decade. Every couple years, 2, 3, 4 years, he has like a smash hit. You know, Blade Runner was again the 80s.
Gladiator
Alien, Gladiator, Alien. Gladiator was like what, like 99? It was 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Black Hawk Down.
Oh damn.
I mean, when you go through his library of films that Ridley Scott has done, it's extensive. Like, very few people parallel that, right? So, I mean, and his brother, who actually passed away, was Tony Scott, who was an equally prolific filmmaker. Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, the first Top Gun, Enemy of the State.
Oh wow!
Like hit after hit after hit. Unstoppable with Denzel. Yeah. So, you know, once you've reached that level that they're at, like, and you're directing the movie, you're just gonna have just because of the amount of knowledge you have and the people around you and the well-oiled machine you come with, right? Because it's not like they're showing up to direct a movie and then they have to hire a production designer and then have to like turn it into a machine that can then make this movie. They've got this well-oiled machine. They just bring it every time. So it's like a traveling circus, so to speak. Even something like, you know, when you look at like Scorsese as an example of this, right? He has a relationship and he uses the same actors over and over again. There's a reason for that because you have that historical rapport. So you can just hit the ground running, you know? And it helps that those actors are like bankable movie stars, like Leonardo DiCaprio. So
yeah, DiCaprio often does stuff with Scorsese.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, like, and it helps if you have a track record of writing and directing successful films. Also, on top of that, but now they're like coming in as a package to a studio, and it just gives you more control, more power than, you know, if you're a director being hired onto a movie, and then you're meeting the lead actor for the first time, and well, the movie got greenlit because of the lead actor, not because of you, and then the actor has all the power, and then creates a weird dynamic, right? Famously, David Fincher, who I don't know, by the way, like I don't know. This is a secondhand or third-hand account. So Reese Witherspoon's company optioned the book, so they acquired the rights to the book that was the basis of the movie Gone Girl, right? And presumably she acquired the rights for the book so that she could play the lead, right? Because that's a great role for an actor. So she develops the material. David Fincher wants to do it, but he like wouldn't do it. He wouldn't direct the movie with Reese as the lead. So it became someone else, and she was a producer on the movie, but it was Rosamund Pike who played the lead, and she got nominated and whatnot, right? But it's like, because again, it's like a power dynamic thing.
Oh, but Reese Witherspoon wanted the role?
I don't know Reese either, but like,
That's
so
like
fascinating. She wanted the role because, again, she acquired the book for herself, right? When actors form production companies and they start acquiring material in order to like get movies made, they're not doing it to just become producers. They're usually doing it because there is not a lot of great material out there for actors. And you want to be able to control it, right? Be like, okay, well, I'm going to develop my award-winning role.
Oh my gosh. So some of these big time actors, they buy the rights to the material so that they can star in it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I mean, I'm so naive to this. It's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, like, what is a big time actor? At the end of the day, what is a big time actor? It's someone who has recently starred in a movie that was critically and financially successful. Right? Every day that movie comes out and is gone out, and then every day that passes, you're becoming less and less and less of a famous person until you have another hit, right? So you got to keep feeding the beast unless you become yesterday's news.
Having mentioned Scorsese, what are your thoughts on how he's been saying that some of the stuff that's been made recently isn't cinema? What's his take on what cinema is and what it isn't? And what are your thoughts on what cinema is?
I have no idea. I literally have no. I like because words are all made up, right?
Okay.
Like what? Where are we right now? America doesn't exist. It's a construct. Like, so we're making all this stuff up, right? These are all concepts that we're making up. So like, I don't know who nominated him Webster's dictionary, you know, like, I don't know what he's talking about. It just feels like, I mean, on some level it's gatekeeping.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess
also, I think this dude should spend less time focusing on what is cinema and what isn't cinema, and like kind of focusing on why he kind of had a hand in defrauding the Malaysian taxpayers over the financing of Wolf of Wall Street. I think that'd be a better thing to focus on.
Okay, I know nothing about this. Can you talk about this more?
I mean, it's all public knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah, Wolf of Wall Street was financed 50% by the Malaysian taxpayers. It was a giant like kind of scam and a like an exercise in fraud, right? But I don't know, man. I don't think the Malaysian taxpayers wanted to finance that Wolf of Wall Street, that $100 million kind of chunk of financing that went towards making a movie that should have been made for about 60. By the way, the budget of Wolf of Wall Street was $200 million, but I'm saying 100 came from Wolf of Wall Street.
$200 million for that movie?
For that movie, yeah. Should have been made for about 40 to 60, and that would have been a lot, right? So maybe that's how he defines cinema. Like, let's just go fucking, let's just go grand. If it's not grand and we're not like lining our pockets with cocaine.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, look, that shit pisses me off because it's like, it's a form of colonization. It's a form of like colonialism, right? You're like going to another place, robbing them of their resources to make your thing, which, like the local artists there could have benefited from those resources. They could have, local filmmakers could have used that to make movies.
Yeah,
but no, it has to go to Scorsese because he's just cinema. How will cinema survive without him?
I don't.
And also, why is he dissing theme parks?
Oh,
theme parks
part
are
of his
fucking
dissing?
sick. Yeah. He's like, oh, Marvel movies are theme parks. Like, okay, like you're saying that like it's a bad thing. Theme parks are sick, dude. Like, theme parks have like a pretty big future with virtual reality and augmented reality. Let's go easy on the judgment there, bro.
And so, seeing the vibe that Scorsese has with his judgments,
right?
It kind of contrast with John Carpenter. It seems like more of the impulse of blending a lot of different things and creating something new, and something similar to what I feel you have.
Yes.
Okay.
Totally. I feel a kinship with Carpenter because, well, one, he was like a man of the people, kind of. So I've met John. I've hung out with John. I don't like purport to know him super well, but again, from second, third-hand accounts, he identified as one of the crew. He didn't think he was above anyone else, and he was making kind of these beautiful allegories set in these like weird fantastical worlds that were just so ahead of their time. If you watch a movie like Big Trouble in Little China, you're like, oh, like this is a singular vision, right?
I just rewatched Big Trouble in Little China with my dad the other week. Amazing.
Yeah.
And it had this feel like it was one long scene.
Yeah.
It was really fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Talented dude who didn't get his due or the recognition back in his day by his contemporaries. It's just the later generations, such as ours, who have discovered him or rediscovered him in a big way. And I think today he's a peer of some people who might have a stick up their ass.
I was actually shocked to see, because Big Trouble in Little China was a movie I was familiar with in my childhood. It came out a few years. I think it came out 1986.
Mm-hmm.
So I was born in 85. I probably saw it in the late 80s, early 90s.
Same.
And fond memories of it. But then when I was reading about it recently, I heard it did terribly at the box office.
Again, ahead of his time. I mean, Blade Runner did terribly at the box office also.
Oh, Blade Runner was not a hit at the beginning?
Not only was it not a hit, it was a disaster, and the bond company. So movies have bonds, something called a bond, which is effectively a form of insurance.
Okay.
And what the bond company does is it guarantees to the studio or the financier that the movie is going to be done on time and on budget. So if the director is going overboard and it's not going to be done on time and on budget, the bond company will come in, get rid of the director, finish the movie.
And that happened with Blade Runner?
Yes.
Ridley Scott didn't finish the movie?
No, not originally. This is why Blade Runner has like 30
What?
different... This is why Blade Runner has multiple cuts. There's like...
That's why the director cut.
Yeah.
Because
the original cut wasn't the director's cut. It was the bond company cut.
This is so fascinating to find out that movies that are immortalized now, they were terrible at the box office when they first came out. Yeah.
Well, the other, I mean, and the flip side of it is things that were like juggernauts in the box office just did not stand the test of time. That's to me, that's the crazier thing, right?
You got some examples off the top of your head?
I mean, so many, but the problem is, I don't remember them because they didn't stand the test of time, but they were like big fucking deal. There was someone like driving up and down Sunset, like, oh, fucking king of the world. Cut to 2 years later, people are like, well, what was that? And he's like, who's the number one movie?
That is the sense I get with a lot of the movies today. They come out and they seem to be a huge hit, and then a few weeks later, no one talks about them again.
Oh, I think that's also different because there's so much more content now.
Okay.
There's so much more content. And also, like, today the past is competing with the present. That wasn't the case in the 80s and 90s. So if Schwarzenegger had a new movie come out, a new action movie, okay, it was going to be an event, right? Mm. And it was competing against other movies that came out that week. Today, if Schwarzenegger has a movie come out, it's competing against his entire filmography because it's all available on streaming. So if it's not offering something completely new, like what the fuck is it doing?
I heard previously you mention that the Wachowskis were a huge influence on you.
Yes.
And The Matrix is your favorite movie of all time.
Yeah. I'm constantly questioning reality. When I was a kid, I was constantly questioning reality, right? Like I was like, are these people actually real, or are they all actors who are tricking me? And then the moment I leave the room, they're all like, ooh, like I didn't know that I wasn't not living in the Truman Show.
I love
right?
that movie. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh. But yeah, The Matrix was like the first thing I saw that really kind of leaned into that concept of reality is this construct. And I was also like really into kind of Greek, like the Greek masters, Plato's allegory of the cave, same thing. It's like the same thing as that point in my life, right? I was very into philosophy. I still am, but very into philosophy. And this was a movie that like somehow mixed guns. My two favorite things, guns and philosophy. And sunglasses, yeah.
What is fascinating is I think it's getting really trendy for people to be in the Matrix today. I don't know. At the time it came out, I don't recall how big it was to people or how reality questioning people were. Because I remember being like that myself since early childhood. It's very trendy now for people to say they're reality questioning.
Okay, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, go on.
But I mean, that also feels like a pandemic thing, right? Because that trend happened after the pandemic, or at least the way I observed it. that we're going to question everything. I'm not making a judgment on it. It just kind of seemed to have this major upswing when everything started being questioned everywhere.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I
like
can see that too.
Like, let's say you had like 12 people having this conversation in like 1999, right after the Matrix came out. It's not like the news was covering it. The news was going to be like 7 middle schoolers are questioning the nature of reality, right? But now it's a news story. It's like these middle schoolers are online, you know?
Keeping on with the Wachowskis, one thing I heard you mention that I was surprised about, and I still haven't watched the movie, but Speed Racer.
Yeah.
So you were commenting on Speed Racer being a huge influence on your show.
For sure.
Guardians of Justice, and that it actually was a huge influence for a lot of people going into visual effects and making movies.
Yes.
And I just didn't even know much about the movie. And you also mentioned that part of the reason why it didn't do so well at the box office was that The Dark Knight had come out that year. So this possibly more of the attention was on that.
But I also think, and again, like I'm one of the people that wasn't like jumping up and down for joy for Speed Racer at the time, right? I was like, everything has to be dark, like at the time, which is 2008, I believe. Yeah, it was just ahead of its time. It was doing things visually and tonally that now are just fun and cool, but at the time it was like, what the hell is this? Why is this like people almost critics at least let's throw out the people critics seemed to be offended by the movie when it came out. Because it got criticized for, quote, not knowing what it wants to be, which is like the weirdest criticism. Because if like, well, maybe what it's trying to be is this new thing, and you're forcing it to adhere to one of the, these are the 7 lanes of movies you can make. It can either be a psychological thriller, a horror flick, an action drama,
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're so good at breaking down everything, maybe you can explain who decides what's a film that gets the Academy Award. And then there's some filmmakers that are really well respected. So there's filmmakers that make great movies that aren't really well respected. There's filmmakers that make great movies that are well respected, but they don't win Oscars for them. Like Nolan and Tarantino don't seem to get Best Picture Oscars. And then there's other filmmakers that get the Oscars.
Look, Nolan and Tarantino, most of their movies are nominated for Best Picture. Inception was a Best Picture candidate, as was Dunkirk, as was like Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises. Like Heath Ledger won a posthumous Oscar for his portrayal of the Joker from The Dark Knight. So Nolan gets Academy attention, like through and through. Same for Tarantino. Like most of his movies have been nominated, especially his recent ones, and he's won for like Best Screenplay, like that kind of thing. He's been up for Best Director. So those are 2 examples of people that get the commercial, like the popcorn, the populace appeal, and the critical acclaim, and kind of all of it.
Okay, so bad example.
So those 2 guys aren't examples, but I hear you, and how do I say this? So there's a body called the Academy.
Okay.
Right? It's the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. It's made up of like voting members. And then there's like older members that are being pushed out. It's a thing. It's a political thing, right? And they vote. So everyone in the Academy is sent screeners, and then they vote. And who they vote for determines who wins, who gets nominated, and then who wins.
And what do people have to do to qualify to be a member of this organization?
Great question. You have to have a certain amount of credits, and then you get invited, or you petition to join and get nominated to join, right? and there's different branches, right? There's the producers branch, there's the actors branch, cinematographers, crew people. The largest group within the Academy is actors. Okay. That's why when you look historically, and I think that's kind of what you were saying, like it kind of leaned heavily towards like period dramas where people were crying, and less towards like the cool sci-fi shit that we love. It's because of that, because actors are more likely to vote for like Helen Mirren crying than Keanu Reeves dodging bullets.
Okay.
Right? And there's also been, as of late, like, again, it's all been like kind of politicized in a sense, or well, there's kind of a war happening for the soul of the Academy, so to speak. Right? I have no horse in this race because I don't give a shit. Like, to me, the Oscars, I've been to the Oscars a few times. It's just a thing. It's just a construct that people really, really, buy into. It's just an award. It'll it's just a thing, whatever. But it's fun.
And for the people who go there,
yeah,
a lot of their identity is based on this, right?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just like people in Hollywood. It's just a good time. Like people, they dress up. You get a special pass. You go in, and then kind of it's a thing. It's like a movie premiere on steroids.
Okay.
That's what it is. And then there's like a series of after parties and yeah, it's fun. I'm kind of a little nostalgic for those days. Because things have changed so drastically. But, if you go back to 2009, 9 or 10, whichever year Avatar came out, it's either 9 or 10.
I guess it's 9. Okay.
It was like the two best picture contenders that were like the front runners were Hurt Locker and Avatar, right? And it felt like there was a campaign to make sure that Avatar did not win. So let me clarify. Avatar, most expensive movie ever made at that point, right? Directed by James Cameron, who previously made the most expensive movie ever made in Titanic. This dude is like a gangster when it comes to like making his stuff. You know what I mean? He uses a lot of cash. Like everyone's like, this is going to fail. And then it like is a home run in a way that people don't understand. Yeah.
One moment, Titanic.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was the most expensive movie made at that time.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And why did that movie cost so much to make? Just a ship.
And it's water. It's a whole bunch of things. It's a James Cameron thing, right? He just makes expensive stuff. Like that's his thing. He makes expensive movies, super fucking expensive movies. And the Hollywood trades will write about how he's like a fuck up. It's going to fail. There's no way it can recoup its costs. And then it becomes the highest grossing movie of all time. Like he's done this enough times now that so Avatar, was up for Best Picture, and then Hurt Locker was an indie movie that was acquired out of, I think, Sundance, maybe Toronto, but it was an indie movie, lower. I mean, I believe sub 15 million, maybe sub 10, starring Jeremy Renner, who people would know as Hawkeye, but this was like his breakout role as an actor. Written and directed. I don't know if she wrote it, but it was directed by Catherine Bigelow, who, again, legendary filmmaker. She's dope, done a bunch of stuff. But this was kind of like her comeback movie. She'd done like a big studio movie, like a studio submarine movie that like just hadn't performed because, studio movies are a lot of studio interference. My favorite movie of hers was a movie called Near Dark, again from the 80s. But it was like a vampire movie. Very cool.
That's cool.
But there was a campaign then to like, no, Avatar cannot win. If Avatar wins, it's like, it'll set such a bad precedent. like Hollywood's about the art form, it's not about the spectacle, and there's a whole thing. So there was like it felt like a campaign against spectacle.
Fascinating.
And that was like kind of the start of it, and then it kind of the ripple effect of it was now when you look at the Best Picture nominees, they're not commercially successful movies, right? Like a lot of them get less views than a YouTube video, and that's not a judgment. I'm not saying views are the be all end all of anything. They're not. Right? Pornhub gets more views than anything else. So if we're going by like fucking views, Pornhub crushes.
Yeah.
But this is a trend, and this has affected what gets nominated for Best Picture and the makeup of the Academy. Famously, there was a producer named Bill Mechanic. Super good dude. Don't know him well. Met him a few times. We had a few meetings, and he's just a good dude, you know? And I met him like kind of when he was had left the studio system, but he actually ran Fox. He like literally fucking ran Fox back when Cameron made Titanic there.
Oh, it was a Fox movie. Yeah,
it's a Fox movie. So this dude fucking ran Fox, right? He wrote a scathing letter to the Academy, basically calling them all fuck ups for like just focusing on niche movies and ignoring the blockbuster. He's like, big is not bad. But anyways, it is what it is, right? But there is a parallel universe out there where, an alternate universe, so to speak, where like Avengers Endgame is Best Picture, you know?
What was fascinating is when I was hearing you, Kenlin, and Sam talk about Michael Bay on the last podcast.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I feel like he gets a bad rap, but like he makes bad movies, but the way you guys talked about him is his technical expertise is amazing. Like the way he makes films, it's really complicated. And can you comment on that?
Yeah, no, again, the whole notion of like, and this is what I was trying to challenge in Guardians of Justice, like what is a good movie? What is a bad movie, right? Like what is good and what what are we talking about here? And how much of this is like brainwashing into being like, this is how a movie is supposed to be lit. Because I can find examples throughout history of movies, and it's all pieces of art that like didn't do what good art was supposed to do and still had a profound impact, if not more of a profound impact.
Interesting.
Right? So I think Michael Bay has like a is labeled in a specific way of like, I don't know. I actually don't know. Like because I have no idea, because I don't know if like if we walk down to like the Grove right now, or any mall, and we said, hey, you kid, do you know who Michael Bay is? Like would they even know? I have no idea. So I don't know if he actually has a bad rap, because the other way of looking at it is this is a dude who's been, again, working consistently since the 90s, making bigger and bigger movies. I mean, the Transformers franchise came out of thin air.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I mean, like technically, he's amazing. He's amazing. I don't know him personally, you know. Could be a huge like fuck up in real life. Like maybe he's got a coke habit. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember. I think Trey Parker and Matt Stone on a South Park. Yeah,
and no judgment if he has a coke habit. Like to each his own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No judgment. I think there was was it the South Park movie? Did they say this song is bad, but not as bad as Michael Bay's movie? Was it Pearl Harbor? Was that one of his movies?
Yeah, he did Pearl Harbor. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I'm getting this question from, because I think that whole song was based on Michael Bay not making good quality stuff.
But also, like, you know, I think what I see a lot what I've observed a lot or experienced a lot is people parroting what they've read or heard, right? Like, it's like parroting jokes. Like, do you actually feel Michael Bay's a bad filmmaker, or is that something you've heard and that's like a funny joke and you're like, oh, and it's like a punchline to a joke, and like I know I'm going to get that reaction if I say like, oh, Michael Bay, and everyone starts laughing or whatever it is, right?
I think it's more that because when I watch his, I mean, why do they hire him to make all these movies and they're all successes? I mean, he must know what he's doing.
Yeah.
That's
for sure.
Yeah. Can you talk about
also critiques against him that are leveled against Michael Bay is like, oh, he's not good at scripts. His scripts need work or whatever. But okay, like that's implying that there's one story structure that's the gold standard, and like again, all of this is subjective, right? So the fact that things end up having some sort of groupthink around them is weird.
It's all made up.
It's all fucking made up. It's like we formed some rubric. Well, in that shot, you should have used a green tone. According to whom? What the fuck are you talking about? Like, this dude doesn't know where to place the camera. You're like, what are you talking about? There's like, again, all made up. All made up. All of it. All of it's made up.
Before you got into making films, what did you study in undergrad?
So I started off in economics.
Okay.
And like, I just couldn't do it. I was like, fuck this. This is terrible. And like, there was specifically a class named econometrics. It's like, it was like math. It was just fucking bullshit.
Okay.
And the test was super fucking hard. And I got like a 12. Like everyone failed.
12 out of 100?
But everyone failed. Like the whole class failed. Like there was like, and a bunch of people like complained. They were like, the test was too fucking hard. And the teacher gets up. He was like an Indian dude, right? This Indian dude. So I'm looking at him and I'm like, oh, like 18. I'm 18. And this Indian dude, maybe 19, because maybe it was like in the winter quarter. I think, yeah, it was in the winter. So it was 19. I just turned 19. And, you know, he gets up on stage. It's a big class. I went to Northwestern. You know, it's like kind of bigger school.
Really good school.
Good school, big school. And he gets up, and there's like an Indian dude, and he's like, you know, lots of people have complained that the test was too hard. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, he's going to like reverse everyone's scores, and, you know, because it was fucking hard. And he's like, but I want you to know that this is Northwestern University. It is not Mickey Mouse University. You have all failed, and you will continue to fail. And he just goes off on this like rant. And it was like cartoonish. And I was like, I don't want to fucking be this guy or be around this guy. What the fuck? So I quit. I was like, dude, fuck this.
Oh, you dropped out of undergrad?
No, I dropped out of economics.
Okay.
Well, out of the class and then economics, because I was like, oh, fuck this. This is bullshit. Yeah, and then I ended up switching over to communications. Because I was like, dude, I want to go to Mickey Mouse University. Like, fuck you. Like, you're saying that, again, this is like Scorsese and his theme park bullshit. It's like, I want to watch a theme park. Go fuck yourself. I want to go to Mickey Mouse University. That sounds awesome. Sounds more fun than whatever fucking, like, alleyway you're fucking hanging out in. You know what I mean? So I go to, so I switched to communications, which is just fabulous because you're learning all these things about, it's like a kind of an amalgamation of like business, of sociology, psychology. It was just kind of a great liberal arts education. I also then added business, and which was a different degree, business, and then a theater degree. So it was like all three.
Okay, communications, business, theater.
Yeah.
Okay. How did that lead you to get into making films? Was it through the theater part of it?
No.
I did see you comment on you had an interest in wanting to make a movie, and then you got something called The Blacklist.
Yeah, I mean that was much later. I think the bottom line was, you know, I wanted to do something creative. I didn't really understand how movies worked or how they were made. Mm-hmm. I knew that people acted in them, so I wanted to act in them. Yeah, and I mean it's not a linear story, although it all kind of happened really fast because I was on my first movie set by the time I was 23, so that was just kind of like boom. And by the way, like the movie, I was one of the producers of that movie that I was So it was like a whole
at 23.
At 23, yeah. So that was its own thing. Maybe I was 24, but it was like 23, 24. But, I mean, I guess when I was at university, I was like kind of leaving, how do I say this? There was a few things that conspired to make me kind of run, not walk, run, full on sprint in this direction. The first was, I used to teach a class at Northwestern, which is fucking crazy because I was a student there. But as a senior, I used to teach a class there called Advertising and Brand Management. And then I taught this class for a whole year after I graduated Northwestern. Now that's going to spark a bunch of questions. Like, how the fuck did that happen? What did you know? Like, how? So again, the whole story doesn't make sense. Like a lot of, like, because if I tell you an answer, you go like, what? But
me being here doesn't make sense.
Right.
But yeah.
But when I was a sophomore in college, I had a concept which was like, if you're Coke, Nike, or GE, and you need advertising and branding help, there's a handful of ad agencies that you go to. At the time, it was companies like Saatchi & Saatchi, Foot Coat and Belding, Leo Burnett, big ad agencies, right? And they worked on the big fucking mega campaigns. And these companies, they had, again, big reputations, but a lot of the times the people that were working on the campaigns were like people not that far out of college. And Northwestern had a good amount of people that ended up at those ad agencies.
Okay.
Right. Again, this is pre-social media. So if you were a small to medium-sized business, you had absolutely no one to help you with your branding shit or your advertising. Like, you had no way to do it. So you'd have like an intern do it, or like, figure out some Photoshop thing and just print out a flyer.
Yeah,
right?
we're talking the early mid 2000s, right?
Yeah, we're talking like, George Bush is running the ship, that era. So like a light bulb went off, and I went, hold on. Northwestern has a bunch of kids who are very soon going to be out working at the agencies. To get those jobs, they're going to make spec ads. They're going to make a fucking fake M&M's ad, a fake Volkswagen ad, and show it and be like, look, this is what I can do to be creative. Meanwhile, Evanston, the town we're in, because Northwestern was a little bit out of Chicago in a town called Evanston. Evanston is full of mom and pop shops, small and medium-sized businesses. So I was like, I could just go to them, get them as a client, and then we can just work on it and then like kind of rebrand different places.
You set up this business while you're an undergrad?
Well, sophomore, yeah. That's what led to me teaching the class.
That's incredible,
Yeah.
man.
Thank you. It sounds a lot cooler when I kind of phrase it, right? Because like there was a lot of days where I was just kind of like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm like a student. I don't want to be doing this shit, But yeah, I mean,
you were 19 years old, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would just do stuff like this because I just would start doing stuff. So I'm teaching this class for a whole year out of school. Meanwhile, I'm working at a credit card company, Discover, the Discover credit card. I fucking hate it. Like I would literally like drive to work, park, and there was like multiple days where I would like drive to the top of the parking structure. I mean, Discover, by the way, was like a 1950s style corporation. So there were multiple days where I would like drive to the campus. It'd be snowing. I'd look and be like, I could just end it all now by just jumping off. Done. Don't have to go to work.
Oh no.
And I'm like, okay, this needs to fucking end. This is bullshit. Yeah, but luckily I had the class that I was teaching, and that was giving me the self-confidence, giving me self-confidence. So I'm like, okay, cool. If I can do that, I can do that. Fuck this. I'm out. I can run away. And my next logical thing was like Hollywood. Because it felt like a fuck you to everything.
And then...
And part of it is like, I was like, my family was like living in Singapore. They were just kind of like I have like an international background, right? And it's like, I always felt like I was being like judged or mocked. Because I was like a kid doing like adult shit.
Okay.
And like, it's almost like people didn't believe that I was teaching this class. And they would like, my parents' friends would like, family friends would make jokes like, oh, he's teaching a class now, little boy teaching a grown-up class. I'm like, shut the fuck up, I will stab you. But like, obviously I didn't stab them. But like, my way of like bitch smacking them was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go to Hollywood and make something. And then, obviously that journey is not fruitful because you realize like, oh, just don't interact with that person. You don't need to like go manifest a career in order to tell them to shut the fuck up. But
but it's fascinating. So it was this, you didn't like the work that you were in.
Yeah, hated it.
And you also, it was an FU to the aunties and uncles.
All of them.
And that's what led you to like steamroll into Hollywood.
Yes.
That is so fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then as of now, when you started making movies in Hollywood, you were 27, where you're the youngest.
Once the movie started becoming like kind of like big international, like no long. Yeah. It was like, 26, 27.
But
yeah,
you're the youngest person to get a #1 movie in the box office, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I think there's like, but about the aunties and uncles.
Yeah.
Like, so you're asking like how they reacted to everything?
Yeah. I guess it's fascinating to me because of that early success that you had.
Mm-hmm.
Getting so much success in Hollywood at such a young age.
Yeah.
But a lot of that was stimulated by what the aunties and uncles were saying.
Not a lot of it, 100% of it. 100% of it. 100% of it.
And
because I basically wanted people to shut the fuck up and leave me alone. Right? And it hadn't dawned on me then that, I can just not talk to these people, because I would go see my parents and my parents would be like, oh, come on, you just come out and meet people. And I'm like, well, someone's going to piss me off. And I would be kind of like emotionally violated by like some jackass. And I wanted like a trump card to make everyone just leave me the fuck alone.
It really is unfortunate how, I can't speak to how the cultures in other ethnic communities are, but I can relate with the Indian community. They're not always very friendly. And
they're also not very
judgmental.
And they're not very smart. That's the other thing. Smart, I'm like, you guys are morons.
Yeah.
Like
but very strongly judgmental morons.
Like the kind of like not know, there's that thing where like if you don't know enough to know that you don't know, so you just think you know.
The Dunning-Kruger effect kind of.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, a lot of that. All right. So I was like, oh my fucking God. And look, again, I'm like in my early 20s. I'm very sensitive. A teenager. You're more sensitive then, right? And I hadn't found my tribe yet. Yeah. But no, it was definitely a thing. It's definitely a thing. And we can dissect this more if you'd like.
What is fascinating, a parallel to this that I see in your show, Guardians of Justice, which I think is one of the best shows I've ever seen. It seems like you are highlighting the significance of trauma in childhood and like, I guess in young adults, how it affects like their growth and development and like everything afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So with the characters, I know Little Wing, and then who was that? Red Talon.
Little Wing, Red Talon. Nighthawk has this as well, right? His parents were murdered. It's just, it's people trying to control because of the trauma, feeling like they need to control, like the weight of, Nighthawk's big fallacy is like, he feels like the weight of everything is on his shoulders, but like, it's like, again, dude, no one put you in charge. You don't have to do what you did. But yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, I don't know if the auntie uncle thing was like a, maybe we should kind of explain what that is, because like to any like to like any non-Indian viewer, but it's like a toxic thing within the South Asian community, kind of globally. It's a global phenomenon.
And they don't literally have to be your uncles and aunts, but all the adults who are friends of your parents in that whole community, we call them aunties and uncles.
Well, I don't. I just,
Yeah.
I don't. But
yeah.
Unless I like them.
Yeah.
But sorry, I interrupted.
But yeah.
The resentment's coming out.
But yeah, you go to these group like Indian get-togethers, and then all the adults, aunties and uncles. I guess you don't call them that. But yeah, they often ask probing questions that are judgmental. Yeah.
And just kind of have no frame of reference of how anything works. It's very frustrating. Right.
Yeah.
Make condescending comments.
Never interested in the same things you are interested in.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite person with this archetype is the person who asks questions, then immediately is just completely fucking checked out and zoned out. It's like the zombie. They go into a zombie and they're like not listening to your answer.
And
it's like a thing. Like I don't get it. And I've lived all over the world. It's like a global phenomenon.
And did you notice the phenomenon of they always like to point out certain people that fit whatever like golden boy criteria? It was like, this person is the perfect kid. You ever see that?
Yes. Well, sometimes I fall into that category.
But you weren't at that time. Or were you? Because I thought you said they...
I was. No, I was the golden kid.
Interesting.
But I rejected the entire construct.
Okay.
Because it was designed to pit kids against each other.
Yes.
Right? So, like, I was getting hated on by other kids because I'm, like, making their lives hard because I'm an overachiever. But I'm not, like, trying to be an overachiever. I just can't help myself. I start doing shit, and, like, society in this timeline values the shit I do. So, like, I started an ad agency in college because I fucking liked that shit. I thought it was fun. Ultimately why I did it was because I wanted to get to know the local business owners, because I wanted to like just get to know them because I thought these were interesting people. And I'm like, okay, I can help them out. It wasn't like a strategy to like get ahead and like join some douchebag management consulting firm. I was like, fuck that. Like, dude, I don't even know if I want a job out of college. You know what I mean? But it felt like a construct designed to like pit kids against each other, and I saw how it affected other people's self-esteem, including my own, right? Because then you get kind of hooked on the dopamine hit of that validation that some old out-of-touch person who knows fuck all about what's going on outside of the construct of the Indian community is yeah.
Yeah. I got more stuff to say about that specifically off air, but...
Do it. Say it on air.
It's a little too heavy. But
oh, shit.
Let's say I'm kind of in the golden boy camp.
Oh, for sure you are.
But also kind of not, because I've had a lot of interest outside of that, so it's been interesting. But I see how it can negatively impact other like people who aren't seen as the golden boy.
Yeah.
And it's really bad for self-esteem. Yeah.
Well, and there was like this period. And again, the period didn't go on that long because I was fortunate enough to just kind of show up and shit started happening. But there was a period for like 2.5, 3 years, which again, not a long period of time, but when you're that young, it's a lifetime, where I'd left my credit card job and like I felt judgment levied at my parents. Oh, what is this he's doing? You know? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like if they commented to you directly, it wouldn't have bothered you much, but they were targeting your parents.
It was just, it was just kind of an air of judgment. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, this is like, and I guess what really bothered me at the end of the day, kind of in retrospect, Jenny, who you have not met, I went to her house and I saw like a note that was like, you know, like certain people feel like they have like their entire community cheering them on. It's like, oh my God, you got to call back for an audition. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was the lack of support that pissed me off.
Yeah.
That's the problem, right? It's a tearing down culture. It's not a lifting up. So it's inherently negative. It's inherent negativity. Right?
Yeah.
It's inherently negative. It's designed to keep the community and everyone in it small, because we got to compete with each other. That's the mindset. It's a we've been colonized mindset. That's what it is.
I was thinking that there would be praise if you followed the traditional paths for success, but then, and if you veered off into more creative or atypical endeavors, that they would not.
It's not, you don't, it's not so much praise as much as like a showing off. Oh, you know, my son is a fucking doctor, and the thing, but behind closed doors, it's like, let's get married. Why aren't you married? You're like, okay, fine, fuck it, I'll get married. Okay, they'll leave me alone. Okay, you got married, but please have 2 children. You know, it's like constantly like this kind of this level of just kind of like neediness between the entire ecosystem, right? Where it's like codependency on such a large scale that it becomes impossible to identify it as codependency. It just feels like a relationship. But it's not a relationship, right? If it's an ecosystem where everyone's guilting everyone else,
that's what it is,
and it's just guilting, right? Like, oh, you know, I'm gonna die, and before I die, I want to see my grandkids. You're like, just shut the fuck up. Why are you talking about you dying? Like, what the hell? Well, what is this? But this is like a normal conversation amongst like certain Indian families. And I observe this because I'm like kind of around it sometimes as like the anomaly.
The anomaly in the matrix. Yeah.
But I do also see like, and this isn't a fear, but I'm also acknowledged that I get to be the anomaly in the matrix because I've had material success. I don't need anything from the ecosystem, right? Like, I like, you know, if I'm in the Middle East, I'm like, for instance, so if I'm like, you know, go visit family members in the Middle East, I'm around Indian people. Again, I'm not like ranking, but it's just, look, I carved my own path. I don't need anything from you. And I have like my own kind of world. So I don't play this game. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah.
It seems like some of the stuff explored in Guardians, at least that I felt like you were trying to convey, is good versus evil and what are ideas of that.
Yes. Definitely one of the themes there. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So why don't you, and it goes into, so there's like deontological ethics and there's consequentialist ethics, like what's more important to you? Do the actions that you take have to be the right ones, or is it the outcomes that matter? And I thought what's fascinating is typically villains in stories tend to be more of the utilitarians, the consequentialists. They actually think that they're good guys trying to like have the good outcome. So, for example, Nighthawk is a utilitarian. I mean, he's doing a lot of immoral actions because he's trying to do the greater good.
For sure.
So, what are your why does that make someone a villain when they act like that? Because that's typically how the villains in movies are. So,
but I think, I think again when you look at the Western paradigm of it,
okay,
versus the Eastern paradigm for it, right? In the East, there is no good and evil.
Yeah.
Right. In the West, it's like who's the good guy, who's the bad guy.
Yes.
Okay, Russia's bad, U.S. good. Let's go shoot them. Let's send Stallone after them. In the East, there's again, really ancient civilizations kind of drop that shit eventually, and then they replace it with something else, right? So what I was trying to accomplish was a hybridization between the two. So it's not like pure good versus evil, but it's not pure like, oh, well, everyone's enacting their own karma and like, it's like, okay, they're doing evil shit. I want to explain to you why they're doing the evil shit. Mm. And there's a person in opposition to them, and I want to get into why that person feels like they need to be in opposition to them and where the conflict comes from.
And each person has their point.
For sure.
Yeah, it's
and even like, in the last episode, like Awesome Man tells Speed, like, maybe what Nighthawk's doing is for the greater good. And she goes like, every evil bastard in history has believed they are doing something for the greater good. Another way of saying that is the path to hell is paved with good intentions. So it's not a judgment on all this. It's more of just an observation, because ultimately Guardians for me was like a kind of reflection of how I saw the West, saw America when I first experienced America. Just a lot of sounds and like bright things and like flashy things and like Street Fighter and like, like Mortal Kombat. Like I was like, oh my God, this place is fucking awesome. The commercials were sick. The toy commercials felt like movies that I wanted to see. And,
you really gave this awesome video game feel to that show. Mm-hmm. I really liked during some of the fight scenes when they had power bars above their heads, and it felt like old school video games. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Appreciate it. That was, it was a thing. Again, Graham Hughes, who you've not met, Graham did all that. The visual effects, yeah.
So I didn't know about Graham, but this is fascinating. So I know that you mentioned that part of the difficulty of making the show was that it involved 8 different mediums.
More.
Okay, yeah. More than 8.
Yeah.
There's live action, there's claymation, there's 3D animation, there's like, I don't even know
paper. There's like fucking paper animation. I mean, within like even within the 2D animation, there's like, it depends on what we're talking about when we say mediums. So like, mediums, and then you can kind of split them into sub-mediums or subcategories within the medium. So it was just fucking astronomical.
And it would get into that Nintendo style or SNES and Sega Genesis style. And I would love that because it would bring me back to like feeling like it was the 80s and 90s. Yeah. So Graham was helping you put that vision into...
Oh, for sure.
Okay. That's fascinating because, someone could do that in a contrived way for the show, but hearing you talk before, you say the way you visualize things and the way your memories are, they're animated like that.
Yeah.
So that show, Guardians shows how you actually see things.
Yes.
That's really fascinating.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think in animation. Yeah, it's fascinating. Even
down to the detail of like everything, life feels like a fucking play. It's like people feel like they're actors in a play and they're just not aware of it.
Yes, actually, in Hindu like philosophy, this whole thing is supposed to be a drama.
Yes,
it's Leela. Yeah. we're like Brahman God that is getting lost with itself. With we are playing all the actors.
Yes.
I really resonate with that. Yeah. The beginning of Guardians with Marvelous Man.
Mm-hmm.
I get the sense I resonated with his speech that he gave.
For sure.
And I feel like it was personal to you too.
Absolutely. That was like the impetus for the whole show.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about that?
Well, I was just, super depressed, and I've mentioned this in the past. I was super depressed, and I've been on antidepressants a couple times. And the last time was like 2014, and I didn't realize I was depressed. Go to the doctor. Doctor's like, dude, you're fucking depressed. I'm putting you on Zoloft. So I take Zoloft. Immediately everything starts getting like bright and colorful, like, birds are singing, that kind of like, everything starts feeling like a Disney animation. And that's when it kind of dawned on me, like, well, fuck, what would have happened if I was Wolverine? And because Wolverine, the character Wolverine, he can't get drunk because his body can't metabolize alcohol. And then I was like, well, Wolverine actually, his healing factor is psychological as well. So he'd be good. And then I immediately went to Superman. I said, well, what would happen if Superman was depressed? And he's like literally an alien. He's not from this planet. So like whatever pharmaceutical companies are making to sell to the population, they're not making it to sell to him because he's an anomaly. And that was, and that's where the monologue came from.
Because you know how Marvelous Man's character was basically trying to do good all the time.
Yes.
But it was just never enough.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can relate. Yeah.
Well, and what's been really cool since that, right, is like I've learned like boundaries. Boundaries are huge. And I've learned how to take care of myself better, because there was a period where I was like literally operating in a paradigm where I was like putting people's needs before my own.
Okay.
And thirdly, this, most of my friends are healer people, right? So there are people I can hand people off to and say, I'm sorry you're going through this. Call this person. They can help you out.
Fascinating. So now you can still help them in their healing, but also protect yourself.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. It doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, why don't you move in with me, and I'll help you out for 6 months while I put all my shit on hold.
And was this the part of your healing that you mentioned how you need, in order to get Guardians of Justice done, like to take the vision you had and to actually finish it, you said you had to take a couple years of personal development and healing to get the project done?
I mean, I think the whole process was like a giant healing process.
Okay.
The whole thing, because I had to like, I didn't necessarily start in the project because it was a 7-year door-to-door thing to get it done from beginning to end. I didn't enter the project as someone that had the tools, the knowledge, the wherewithal, the emotional stability to finish the project. But I ended the project as someone that can do that with no issues and no like soreness, no muscle soreness after the fact. You know what I mean? Like it was a bunch of skills I had to develop and a lot of things I had to come to terms with and a series of things that I had to let go of that allowed me to become the person who can effectively write and showrun a TV show or direct a movie or, and to do it at the level that I expected myself, right? Because I don't want to just be like another guy out there directing movies. And it not from like an ego place. It's not like, oh, I have to be the best or else the thing. Like I hold myself to a very high standard because I just want to, because I choose to, not because if I don't do it, then my sense of self-worth somehow gets diminished. My self-worth is absolutely not tied to success or accolades or anything like that, right? It's not tied to it at all. But I'm just like, if you're going to do something, just fucking do it well. Just do it well.
You feel that thing that's trying to come out.
Yes.
And you want to be able to do it.
Right.
That's basically it. It's not about the success that comes with it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. I tried that game for a little bit, you know, but it's not fulfilling, and you feel like you're in a hamster wheel.
You were mentioning before you were done with Guardians that there were people pushing you to get it done sooner.
Yeah.
And on a podcast, you mentioned how your mom helped you not give in to that.
Yes.
And then also you mentioned someone at Netflix, like Larry Tans.
Yes.
Is that his name?
Larry's I want to say the single best executive I've ever worked with. But there's also now Hugo Ravon at Ubisoft, who's like one of my favorite people on the planet. So it's Larry and Hugo. But yeah, Larry was like, "Are you done?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "All right." And my mom as well. She was like, "Dude, do not listen." She like overheard a couple or one person trying to convince me to like, "Look, just get it done." And the logic there being like, you know, there's a lot of people who wanted it done because then like I get to move on to the next thing and maybe I'll bring them along. And then this is like, because it's a thing it's a credit on a lot of people's resume, right? And if the thing's still sitting on my computer, it's not a real credit yet. So it was that. It was, yeah. Again, I don't blame anyone. There's no resentment there. It was just something I had to, again, a boundary that I had to learn how to put up, which is no. For most things, yes. Not for me, not for this project. That's not how I work. It's done when it's done.
I really am proud of you for being able to do that, because the feel I get from you is you care a lot about how other people feel. So you must have felt a lot of the energies of the other people, and you probably felt really guilty.
Oh yeah. That kind of absolutely, for sure. That's so great that you picked up on that. Yeah, it's like I felt horrible because I'm like, not everybody, very few people just move out here and just kind of start making stuff. And this is a big break for someone. And now they're like, they're thinking it'll be out in a year, then 2 years, then 3 years, then 4 years, then 5 years, and they've just fucking given up, and then 6 years, and then it's out. I felt that, and I definitely did, and I had to like learn how to be like, well, that's their thing, right? That's their, because that pressure. Yes, someone made a comment on set. I think the day I was filming my Logan Lockwood stuff, my Lex Luthor.
It's stuff. So awesome that you're in the show too.
As Lex Luthor. It's fucking hilarious. But yeah, there's definitely some like psychological, you know what I mean? Like some psychologists could definitely like break it down and be like, someone made a comment on set about how like I felt like an expectation to take everyone on my journey with me. And like I'm the type of person who would want to do that if I could, Yeah. If I had a compound with an infinite number of guest rooms, they would fill up like that. Well, I guess not. They wouldn't fill up because infinity is, but like if I had like 100 guest rooms, they would be a dole amount. Like you get a guest room, So yeah, that was a thing to just kind of like, but it kind of happened all at once. I realized like I need to stop listening to people. I need to stop fucking listening to people. There was anyways, now I'm.
And simultaneously, you were having to handle that, but at the same time, what I was shocked to hear is a lot of the people who were involved in the show, in order to get the acting that you needed, they couldn't know like what your whole vision was.
Yeah.
They thought that it was going to be a dark, serious show.
Yes.
And then other people involved in different aspects of the show didn't even know what the other aspects were.
Yes.
How did you manage to compartmentalize that?
Well, you just tell the person specifically what you need them to know for them to give you what you need. That's it.
Okay.
So like the claymation studio that we did the claymation with, we're like, okay, here's the character, here's the scene, here's the shot. They don't know what it's for.
Okay. And this must be me being naive because not knowing the industry at all, because I'm thinking, what about when you guys hang out later and then they start talking about your ideas and like where the show's going? Is that something that just doesn't happen? That just
doesn't happen. I mean, it happens. It just doesn't happen with me. Like I don't hang out.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't hang out. I stopped hanging out. That was one of the things. It was actually one of my takeaways. I had to stop hanging out. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Because I had
boundaries.
It was a boundaries thing. Because because I would get thrown that energy of, oh, is it done yet? And I'm like, what? You know, that was the energy that some people would throw me, and I'm just like, okay, I can't hang out with you because I'm feeling this judgment of, is it done yet?
So then,
or it's taking so long. It's like, well, I'm the one working on it every fucking day, dude. And you're not helping the process by going,
My guess would be that energy wasn't coming from Diamond Dallas Page.
No, not at all.
Because you guys are actually very good friends in real life.
Yes, but look, this was coming. I mean, like a lot of the people I'm friends with or friendly with who were working on the show. No, Dallas is great, right? Because Dallas is older too. So time moves differently for you when you're older because it's like a smaller. Every day is a smaller percentage of your life. So like he's just like, bro, it's done when it's fucking done. You're a fucking genius. Tell them all to fuck off. It was just like that. It just pepped me up. You know what I mean? Like it was that. And also did not come from Sharni, who played the Speed, Sharni Vincent. She's she was a friend of mine. And what I appreciated about Sharni and Dallas is they're the two people that had the most to benefit from it coming out.
Oh, fascinating.
Right?
Yeah, because Dallas is the lead on the show. Yeah.
And this was like his big coming out party as the lead of a fucking Netflix show.
But he never pushed you to get it done sooner.
No, if anything, he said, take longer. He's like, just keep going with it, bro. I don't give a fuck. Take your time. You know, like, it was like, oh, wow.
That is a very good impersonation of him.
He's great. He's great. I mean, me and him had, like, we met in, like, 2009 or 2010. So we'd been friends for a long fucking time. And been friends for a long fucking time.
And him being cast on the show was more of your friendship with him and less of your love for professional wrestling.
Yes.
From before.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted like kind of a Mickey Rourke kind of take on Batman.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, and I know the kind of human being Dallas is as well. Right? He's a dude who does the work. He's overcome a lot of empathy, a lot of community service. He puts in the work. He's not going to show up and half-ass anything.
Yeah, I didn't know that much about DDP, but after I met you, I watched one of his interviews recently, and he seems like such an amazing guy. I was weeping while listening to a lot of the stories. I mean, he took care of like mentors and friends of his that helped him like rise up in the wrestling world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he's just helped countless other people. So.
Oh yeah. This is like what he does. This is why me and him are like friends. I know a ton of wrestlers. I've been to like weddings with wrestlers. Like I've been to like, you know, like I've been in situations where there's like all household name, famous wrestlers. I'm the only non-wrestler there. They're, you know, it's like...
Oh, it's like all wrestlers.
All wrestlers and me. I've been in like, this is different. Dallas is my friend.
What other things are you interested in making that you haven't made yet?
Video games and board games.
And board games?
Yeah.
And video games.
Uh-huh.
So I do remember hearing a comment about you saying that part of the reason you went into making films was a consequence of when you were, the year you were born. That if you were born in this era, you would possibly you would have been a video game developer?
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've had this feel of wanting to make a video game for a while.
Yeah. Look, what I would love to do at some point is make just a thing that exists across multiple mediums, like a TV show, a game, and a board game, and tell a story across mediums.
Okay, so it's gonna be a shared theme.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd love to do that. Yes, I'm going to manifest it at some point. I was about to say, I hope I get the opportunity, but like, you can just manifest it. You just fucking make it happen, you know? There's no trying, there's just doing. And look, I don't know if it's going to be like a fucking AAA video game, right? AAA being like a Call of Duty or that kind of thing. But it'll be a decently budget-sized game.
And it's going to be the thing that comes out of you. That's the sense that I get about you, is that it's something in you that's coming out.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. This is why there's you've mentioned this before. You're like, there's little ego about some of this stuff with me for that reason. Because I don't feel like a sense of ownership over a lot of this stuff. I'm just kind of like, oh, it's like just fucking happening. It's just happening.
Yeah. Which is why it can't be modified by other people trying to control the project, because that's not the thing that's trying to come out.
Right.
Yeah. That makes
but
sense.
they can give me like kind of, but I work well with executives who are kind of like, hey, what about this? This is what you're not seeing. And then it kind of get out like, oh my God, that's a great fucking idea. Then boom. Like I'm working on a show right now where I've constantly thanked my Netflix executives for the notes they give, because I'm trying to find ways to make this better, right? The scripts. And then they're like, here, there, this, and that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. This is fucking awesome.
Seems like so far your relationship with Netflix has been very good.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Okay, so it's not like
a little bit of tension over the Castlevania of it all, but that again has nothing to do with Netflix. Ultimately, they're the licensor of that project. They're the distributor of that project. The tension isn't with them. So it was like, there's really no tension with them at all. It was fucking great. They're fucking awesome.
That's really cool.
The tension was more like, hey, I've got beef with this guy and I hope that doesn't, is that going to damage this? And I just didn't. So fine.
Yeah. I'm guessing you don't want to talk about that tension, right?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point.
Yeah.
Do a tell-all.
Hey, this is Shekhar here, just leaving the Bootleg Universe. I had a fantastic time asking Adi several questions about his life and his work and his genius. Like and subscribe